Good morning, everybody. Never put me on stage without a timer. So I'm really excited to be here. I think the energy that John just shared is phenomenal, and I'm really happy to be part of this conversation to explore the potential, the transformational potential of blockchain in healthcare. You know, I think these are early days, but clearly change is required in healthcare. Thanks for the organizers for putting this on. You know, I heard the hackathon over the weekend was phenomenal. In fact, we found as Humana some use cases that are coming out of the hackathon that are very interesting as first POCs, which is really exciting. You know, in many respects, it is early days, and so here begins this epic adventure. You know, as I think about the potential for blockchain and its enabling capabilities to solve the core problems we see in healthcare, it becomes clearer and clearer every day. I'll talk a little bit today about what is the promise that we all, and frankly the expectation that we all should have about our own personal health and knowing our own score, and that coming with us every day. What is it really like to enable our care system to not only provide seamless and efficient care, but to know us when we go to the doctor's office? And thirdly, what would it be like, and I'll talk a little bit about this later, for healthcare to become simple again? I work for an insurance company, a healthcare services company, and boy, we believe that simplicity is a large part of the problem in our industry today. And as we shift power and control to where it should be, to the consumer, it gets sort of interesting to figure out what we can do. So I don't have the answers, and I think these early conversations are largely going to set the momentum and the path for us. But what I will tell you is that I think that there is a need to start in this conversation with the customer. Mary is 92. She lives in Florida. She suffers from early stage congestive heart failure. I would argue that we are not delivering a great healthcare experience for Mary, that the healthcare system is largely not meeting her expectations as a customer. Great care for Mary would look like a connected system that understood that she is suffering from many chronic conditions and has multiple care parties that are helping take care of her. There would be an integration of her medical and social care, recognizing that Mary's community is far broader than her family. It's those around her that create purpose, but also it's her broader community that give her a sense of value. The healthcare system should simplify Mary's life. She takes 12 plus medicines every day, and the burden of dealing with that is a big problem. Mary should have instant connectivity to her care team, her family, her caregivers. And her caregivers and care team who love her so much, Mary grew up in Boston and lives in Florida, really don't know the status of Mary's health, even though every day she hopes that they do. All of this leads to a better life for Mary, slowing of the conditions that are in front of her, and ultimately allow her to spend more time with her grandchildren. Blockchain needs to help Mary. On the other side of the world, here's Fiona. She's 2. Fiona will live well into the 22nd century. It wouldn't be unreasonable for Fiona to expect an integrated and single view of her health and wellness that is as easy to carry around as this. It wouldn't be unreasonable for Fiona to expect that health is integrated, both in education and in the way she lives her life. It's not unreasonable to expect that Fiona will have bespoke health plans and personalized care that maybe even go to the genomic level, but certainly help her predict and understand the implications of the behavior she makes every day. The promise of the future of healthcare and blockchain needs to start to think about those expectations that Fiona will have after her 3rd birthday. It's great to imagine these futures, but for decades we have made health exceedingly hard for this country. Our jobs require us to sit. The simple and easy and wonderful experience of getting a McDonald's Happy Meal has made that the easiest food option. For many, fresh food is a barrier, and it may not even be a choice at all. We don't exercise enough. In every state, over 20% of us are obese. Diabetes and hypertension are pandemics in this country. Entertainment often comes from the most passive of postures as opposed to active. So we in America are suffering from, we have a problem. And the problem is that this state of being healthy, being hard, has led us to a country that is largely, has citizens largely suffering from chronic conditions. Chronic conditions that are modifiable by behavior change, but chronic conditions that every day feel like bricks on the shoulders of our citizens. And what's interesting in the context of this is our healthcare system didn't grow up in a world of us suffering from chronic conditions or dealing with 3 or 4 or 5 maladies. Our healthcare system grew up largely around episodic care. You come to us when you need us, and we will take care of you. It has grown up in a production environment where doctors were compensated early on to pay for specific points of care. But that fee-for-service mindset doesn't work anymore when you have people who are suffering from lifelong conditions that require not a transaction, but a relationship. So as we think about the implications of that, what has happened, we have a health IT infrastructure that has grown up in those silos, largely supported and informed by sites of care. The data doesn't flow. We spend billions and billions on the electronification of data, and we have a big chasm ahead of us, which is interoperability, because the world of walled gardens and EHRs is preventing a real consumer need, which is to know their score every day. It's just hard to navigate the healthcare system today as a customer. I think every one of us knows that. Every one of us that cares for somebody, cares for ourselves, or cares for our family. So what shift do we need? How do we get there? I'd argue we are at a really, really important time as a healthcare industry. The ACA, Medicare, all are starting to ensure that the locus of control shifts to the consumers. The world of healthcare is at a tipping point. Those taking care of seniors are reimbursed based on outcomes in addition to costs. Consumers continue to have more and more choice on the exchanges in order to find the plan and the doctors that they like. So the shifts we need to think about is how do we move from disintegrated and misaligned to integrated and aligned? How do we shift from a healthcare system that's rooted in we have your data to a system that you have your data? How do we move from opacity to transparency? From health at the doctor's office to managing our health the other 361 days a year. I joined Humana 2 years ago, moved from Silicon Valley and fintech venture. And I did so because I felt like this is an opportunity in healthcare where the healthcare industry should start to do well by doing good. Again, the shift to outcomes, the shift to health, is fundamentally critical to the business model of health going forward, and frankly, fundamentally is needed in order for consumers to find better health. At Humana, we have a dream. We call it our bold goal. And it's a dream with a deadline because we have committed to improve the health of the members we serve in their communities 20% by 2020. I said earlier that fundamentally the problems may be around simplicity. Fundamentally, the problems may be around gaining a deeper understanding of our customers. But if you think about what we need to do, we need to make the healthcare journey be humanized. We as a healthcare industry need to deeply understand our consumers as people, not as diseases. And we need to work exceedingly hard to integrate the healthcare experience in order to take the burden off of the customer. We call that our integrated care strategy, which is rooted in providing consumer solutions to our customers, ensuring that we can help providers make the best optimal care decisions for our members. And lastly, being very progressive on how we can bring new insights and experiences to our members to take friction out of the system. So where are we going? I mentioned earlier that chronic conditions are creating complexity in the healthcare system. It's really, really interesting as we think about innovation in healthcare. Oftentimes we are thinking about solving for that two-tier health economy that has been created by all of our employers moving to high deductible healthcare plans. That's a very important view of innovation in healthcare, but I would posit to all of us that if we follow health, that we will get to bigger opportunities. 86% of the healthcare spend in America is rooted in spend around folks with chronic conditions. So as we begin this conversation around blockchain, I think we have to think about how can we develop new services, new solutions, new integrated models where we are targeting this population. I'm not saying that we have to segment only to the seniors in the world, but what I will tell you is that if we can start to find some wins early that address what is probably the biggest issue facing America and the cost of healthcare, I would argue we have to be thinking about our customers who are aging, our customers who are well on their way, and help them make their health better. That's rooted fundamentally in our work in innovation at Humana, because it really doesn't matter where along that progression you meet a customer. If we deeply understand their needs as a whole person, if we deeply understand the journey, then we can start to help them make choices, and we can start to provide services that help them change that trajectory. So the conversation at Humana is more about a return on health than a reduction in cost, because we know as a healthcare company that if we can invest in people's health and we can view that relationship through the lens of a lifetime value, that we will ultimately be successful in not only help our members enjoy their grandchildren's life, but also see substantial reduction in cost in the healthcare system. So again, I believe that framing our work here around the shared outcome of improving health will bring this wonderful new and emerging blockchain technology to its highest and best use. I mentioned that I came from Citi. I was first exposed to blockchain largely when I got a call from our CEO, and he said, "Tell me about Bitcoin. I just read about it, and I don't understand what a miner is." So I spent some time trying to build some analogies for the senior team at Citi. And it was really interesting because the implications around our early days around blockchain had little to do with the underlying technology. It had all to do with the shift of new forms of value. What are the implications of an anonymous digital currency? I had many debates about the cost and the benefits of putting servers under my son's desk at home so he could mine. And I would say I think I paid more electrical bills than he's created value. But if I think about blockchain, I really do believe fundamentally that this has the potential to be a revolutionary force. I think more of you, far smarter than I, are going to talk about the evolution of blockchain in the context of technology. But I do think we need to be thinking about this as a fourth wave. The first being corporate databases, the second being the push to PCs, the third being the internet, and now blockchain. I think blockchain has the potential to disrupt transactions and trusted transactions more, or at least as much, as the internet disrupted content information sharing. It's exciting, and I think if we look at when I think about blockchain, and I think about some of the fundamental problems that exist in the healthcare ecosystem, it seems to be a match made in heaven. Now, there are fundamental, these are problems that the healthcare system is trying to solve, but let me talk to you about these 5 just briefly. Trust without a central authority. We talk often in the healthcare industry about how do we create more efficiency and eliminate the need for counterparties, third parties, intermediaries. Inefficient, high cost, bad experience. Security, the notion that blockchain requires a consensus and not a centralized entity is very exciting for us. Healthcare, HIPAA and the like are very important consumer protections. But as we look at expectations of consumers, we need to continue to evolve our ability to provide secure solutions to them. Data integration and transparency, what would it be like? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Interoperability is a core problem in healthcare, and I think one of the conversations that we're going to be having with some companies later today is how do we think about unlocking the sort of series of walled gardens that exist in healthcare, and how can we as an industry, doctors, insurance companies, and EHR companies work together to do that. Certainly lower cost is important so that we can reinvest our dollars into health, as is speed, because all of this needs to happen real quickly. I've spent some time with buddies that are working in financial services, both in the middle back office and payments, and I think there's some opportunity for us to consider as we move into healthcare, what we can learn from them. I think as I talked to some folks at MasterCard Labs the other day, and there's 3 points of view and passions they have. One is about the technology itself. Interestingly, that's the hard but easy part. One is about the organization, and how do you start to actually help people understand the paradigm shift that blockchain can represent. And the third then is about the interorganizational questions, which is, if it's us doing it with them, who are we together? These questions are being answered in finance, whether it's R3 and the consortium that's dealing with capital markets, or companies like Abra, who have radically simplified global remittances for consumers. It's exciting to see use cases in media, where folks that are going to be streaming music will be paying directly the artists themselves. New distributed models for voter authentication, something I think we all know we're going to have to work on, especially given what's going on in the news these days. And even reframing the sharing economy, with companies looking to create Uber-like solutions without Uber in the middle at all. I sort of agree with Bill Gates and his oft-quoted notion that we tend to overestimate what can be done in a year and underestimate the potential power of blockchain over the next 10. And I think that's going to apply to what the journey we're on today. But with that in mind, I think I'd like to imagine where we might be a few years from now and where we should start. Fundamentally, knowing your score as an individual, as a consumer, is what is the root of our ability to control our own health. Imagine having your own complete health and wellness records available throughout your life, and that you control who sees what. If those on the blockchain had access to my health record, and I could start to see, and they could start to see, health information that was relevant to them and to me. I could start to expand my data set to include not only the things that I care about in my physical health, but also in my mental health. This experience is mine, and the pain points of moving from and to jobs or anywhere in the world go away. I think, interestingly, taking better care of my health, rooted in the information that I have, helps me make better daily choices, which frankly I think, given the fact that healthy behavior is largely informed by the choices we make, is a really important part of this. In care decisions, physicians and other care professionals can make decisions based on the best data. Doctors want to have a whole view of our records, but really, interestingly, they don't. When I entered the healthcare world, I was exceedingly surprised how little information my doctors had about me, let alone those specialists or other doctors that I went to. Hence the pokes and the prods, the additional tests. And moving this information from provider to provider is frankly one of the biggest problems, as I mentioned, interoperability. But I think blockchain gives us a new way to think about that and create more transparency also in the navigation of care. On some level, too, I think opacity around the quality and cost of care that we receive in America needs to be solved, and blockchain certainly can help with that. But let's take a look at claims payment and administration. Kyle Culver on our team submitted responded to the ONC challenge and submitted a very thoughtful and winning paper on this. I speak to this because I think it actually is a place for us to get started. The complexity inside an insurance company around claims and payments is profound. And the feeling that we all have when we interact with the healthcare system is profoundly hard. You know, what's interesting is healthcare is one of the few markets where the service that we receive, the patient to the doctor, is disconnected from the payment and the remuneration. I believe that our job as Humana is to absolutely flatten the industry in order to create a wonderful consumer experience and to take efficiency out, and put efficiency into the system. Said another way, I would love to see Humana become a yes company. It doesn't mean that every claim is covered, and it doesn't mean that every relationship with a provider or a network are broad. But what it does mean is that there are zero friction points between the time that a patient sees a doctor and the time the payments and the settlements are made. I think that at the end of the day, our job as an industry, again, is to focus on health. But if we were to sort of step back and look at principles for success, I was thinking, and we as a team really have a view around 6 of them. The first is, and you've heard this a lot from me today, let's start with health, let's start with the customer. Because if we start with the customer, this new potential technology will absolutely be transformative. We know that in healthcare, especially in health IT, there is no other industry where technology for technology's sake has taken hold. We need to break that. Build trust in the trust machine. There is a real emotional and native sense that we have about our personal health information. Blockchain has the potential. It is essentially a trust machine. So let's get started with areas where we can work in public. Let's not pick the riskiest areas, but let's start to build trust with points of data and connectivity that we can feel good about. Less hype and more progress. You know, I think we are all here together today, and many of my industry folks are here, but I'd argue that we are very, very overstating the potential unless we get going. So let's get going on POCs that matter You know, a great example of there's a couple of companies here working with Philips, but let's just take a step. The third is get out of the lab and into the world. And fundamentally, my belief around innovation and change is that learning happens on the street. Let's find some POCs that can create some value, and let's get going. Because it's commercialization that ultimately will help build momentum. Let's learn to shake hands differently. I have no doubt that in a future envisioned in this context that the industry players are going to need to change. Business models will change. What we're doing is essentially have the potential to flatten the supply chain of healthcare. And I think it's going to take some courage from partners to step forward and say, let's figure this out together, but always working for the consumer. And then rapid evolution creates a revolution. You know, that's sort of our mantra about the pivot we are under at Humana from an insurance company to a healthcare company. But I would argue we have to continue to look for early wins, which is largely why the Humana team is here with such a great group of thought leaders and technologists. So my own personal view is blockchain is going to happen. Boy, there are some Herculean things to overcome. Siloed data, billions of dollars of health IT infrastructure, maybe even misaligned incentives between some healthcare players. But I do really believe, again, that this journey needs to start with a single step. So as I think about how Humana wants to engage, and I think about how we should all engage with each other, I think we should look for partners that have bold visions. And we should start to look for partners that can figure out how to start to frame proof of concepts for a win-win. And we should start to look for partnerships who have an interest in experimentation. If we understand how to manage those partnerships, we can manage change. And if we can manage change, we can accelerate the adoption of blockchain. But let's remember who we're doing this for. We're doing this for Mary, and we're doing this for Fiona. So however hard that is, as we start down this journey, let's always, always make sure that they are in the room. Thank you very much. I think we have 3 or 4 minutes for questions if we want to start to begin a dialogue here. Any questions? Okay.
What has Humana done in the blockchain space in terms of proofs of concepts, and what's your roadmap to actually experiment and, more importantly, to get this type of technology into production?
You know, we're early, and I'm not at all, I have no difficulty telling you guys. So how has blockchain sort of emerged in Humana? About a year ago, a committed group of cross-functional teams got together and said, we want to start to drive a strategy around blockchain for Humana. I think our the answer to that is we have a open question. And the open question is, in what context should we lead and follow? I'll be really honest with you. We think that third example is a place where we can be really bullish. So part of our reason a lot of our team are here today is to begin conversations and to strengthen partnerships in order to get going. You know, I can't answer the funding, but what I will tell you is you raise a good point about federal level. You know, the federal government is going to have to be involved here in the context of healthcare and a lot of the stuff we just talked about, because you know they are the single largest payer for healthcare in America. And I think that for us to view and you know, I think HHS is obviously through their request for really great thinkers to help them think about that. That's a good step forward. So I think we need to have public-private partnerships here because the implications are going to be profound. But I also will tell you that getting going as a set of private entities to look for the right handshakes to get some use cases that we can then bring the government into, I think, is the right approach. Well, thanks for letting me come today, and I'll look forward to. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so we're going to go through blockchain 101, but it's interesting. I view blockchain as the enabling trust framework, the infrastructure, the distributed infrastructure that allows for the creation of value. Cryptocurrency and Bitcoin was the first use case for that value, which allowed for miners to be mining that currency and that currency be traded autonomously across the chain. So I will tell you, I think that when you bring up a good point here, which is as we are having conversations, which conversations are we having? Are we having a conversation about the technology? I think many believe blockchain is a solution like the cloud, but you know what? It isn't. What does distributed really mean? Why is this a trusted? Why can this framework provide trust? What does a distributed ledger model really mean? And then what value can we create on top of it? And I'm excited about learning more and certainly contributing to that conversation over the next couple of days. Thank you.